Every year, billions of dollars vanish. Lives are ruined, families shattered, and it all starts with one text. Hey, are you picking me up at the airport? Welcome to Stolen, hosted by former prosecutor Erin West, a relentless voice exposing the brutal truth behind transnational organized crime and one of the most dangerous and underreported crimes in the world, pig butchering scams. These are not random frauds. They're global, organized, and devastating. Victims aren't just losing money, they're losing hope. This is the podcast where the silence breaks. Stolen. And now your host, Erin West.
Hey friends, welcome back to Stolen. This is a conversation I've been waiting a long time to have. I am with the fabulously funny, the very clever Becky Holmes. And everyone else I know has talked to you and had good conversations with you, and I've been dying to meet you. For those of you just getting to know Becky Holmes, she wrote a fantastic book, and it is Keanu Reeves is not in love with you. He just isn't.
Sadly.
Unfortunate. I hear he's a very generous man.
I've heard he's amazing.
I've heard he's just a really good person.
Yeah. It just makes you want him to be in love with you all the more.
I wish he were, but no, sadly he is not in love with me or you, Becky Holmes. So welcome to Stolen Podcast. I'm so glad to have you.
Yeah, I'm so excited. I was just saying to you before we started recording, I can't believe that we're actually having a conversation. Years of, communicating. And,
yes.
And here we are, face to face.
I'm thrilled. I'm so glad to see you. So are you in London? You're in
the
UK?
No, I'm in the UK. I'm in Stratford-on-Avon, home of Shakespeare.
It's idyllic there, isn't it?
It is. I have to say, I am very lucky. It is really lovely. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
We get a lot of American tourists over here who go mad for Stratford.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Well, I'm fascinated by you. I thought for sure that you had been a romance scam victim and that's how you got to where you got today. But I have to read a piece from this that I love so much because it reminded me of me. And you say, "I'm just a middle-aged woman. I'm just a middle-aged woman." I don't know how many times I say that. I'm like, I'm just a 54-year-old mom out here trying to fix a massive problem, right? I have lived and breathed the world of romance fraud for over 2 years now, but I'm not a journalist. I'm not trained in investigating scam. Like, I ain't no copper. We are normal.
I wrote that.
No, it's so good. It's so funny. So let me just start with that, by the way. If you haven't read this book, it's highly entertaining. Becky Holmes is hysterical. The way she writes is funny. But let's get to this. Like, you're just a middle-aged woman. I'm just a middle-aged woman. How is it that we are here doing this work? Tell me how you got here.
For me, it came about in an unusual way. So it was people messaging me on Twitter who I identified as being scammers. The only reason, I think, is because so many of them contacted me within like a week. So if there'd been one handsome looking soldier, it could be a very different story because I could have started chatting and it could have gone anywhere really, but it was the sheer volume that I thought, something's not right. And it just kind of went, from me messing around, seeing what I could get away with, to it becoming a real passion. And when I started talking to victims of romance fraud, God, what they go through, obviously while it's happening, but afterwards, and trying to get anyone to listen and take it seriously.
I couldn't identify more in this exact moment with what you said. So something we do at Operation Shamrock is we do these things called survivor stories. So twice a week, we speak with a victim. We do a one-on-one with the victim and have them, the survivor rather, and have them tell us what happened to them. And then we look for the gaps in law enforcement and banking. And my goodness sakes, every single time we talk to them, it's exhausting what they've gone through. What you said that really matters to me is the aftermath. And I don't think people are appreciating that. We think, okay, you got all your money stolen and it's done. Oh, no, no, ma'am. These people have IRS tax consequences. This woman was led to open a number of credit cards for this man, and now she has all of the ramifications of this credit debt. It's almost by the time they realize they've been scammed that really the trouble really starts, the legal's trouble.
Yeah, and I think as well, that's when the emotional roller coaster starts, because a lot of the victims I spoke to hadn't told anybody because they were too ashamed. You know, they just felt like they'd been tricked and they were embarrassed. But I'll tell you what gets me more. The victims I spoke to who had told people, some of their friends just walked away from them. Said, you know, oh, well, how could you be so stupid? And they just walked away. Who does that? Even if in your head you think, you know, you shouldn't have been so silly, whatever you think, you don't walk away from somebody because they've been defrauded. I just, it blows my mind.
It's stunning. It's
Yeah.
stunning, the absolute lack of empathy for victims of this crime. So let me rewind the tape a little bit. You start noticing, hey, there seem to be a lot of very attractive young gentlemen who are all of a sudden interested in me, and so you think, I'm gonna play with this. I'm gonna see what's happening here. Tell me your process. Tell me how you got here.
So yeah, so it was basically that. It was during lockdown, and as we know, you know, this kind of crime spiked in lockdown because people were isolated. So I got a lot of them and I was just blocking them, deleting them. I sort of thought, you know, I can't be bothered with this. And then after a couple of months, when things were so bad in terms of boredom, that I just thought, I wonder what I can get away with. And it became apparent really quickly that they weren't actually listening to a lot of what I was saying. So it turns out I could get away with saying pretty much whatever I wanted to. So I just got weirder and weirder and waited for somebody to notice. And obviously some did, because as we know, some of them are much more sophisticated than others. So I got a lot of very unsophisticated ones coming through and some very, very basic chat, you know, bots as well. And I started putting these conversations up on Twitter where I was just sort of saying anything nonsensical I could think of. And people really found it funny. So I was kind of having a good time with it. But then actual victims of romance fraud started messaging me and saying, look, this is what happened to me. And it just led me down this path. And if it wasn't for lockdown, I might have taken a completely different path. I might not have had time to sit and research and look at what goes on. But as it was, I had all this time and suddenly I got really annoyed, like really, really annoyed.
So tell me about that.
Well, I spoke to, I think it was maybe about 4 people, 3 ladies and one chap. Oh, that was very British, wasn't it? One chap.
One chap. A young lad.
A young man, a young gentleman. I spoke to them sort of within the first couple of months, and 2 of the women just cried down the phone. At the time, I didn't know that much about romance fraud, so I started looking it up, and it annoyed me that people can get away with it, but it annoyed me more that these people, men and women, had nowhere to go. And I couldn't understand why that was. There was nowhere to go. There was no one to take them seriously. They were completely keeping themselves to themselves because they'd been isolated by these people, just like in a coercive relationship. They'd been isolated from their friends and family. And it made me cross. So I've been in an abusive relationship and I was very much isolated. And I started to really recognise these parallels between domestic abuse and romance fraud. And of course, it made me angry. So that's when it turned into, I guess, a mission.
Yeah, a couple of things there. I really appreciate the relationship between family violence, domestic violence, and what these victims are experiencing. The enemy is so sophisticated, despite how they may have acted. They are using sophisticated techniques that work. The isolation, the I'm the only one you can trust. I'm the only one that really
Yes.
understands you.
Yeah.
It
The
just
gaslighting.
the gaslighting. Yeah.
Constant, just constant. And one thing that I think I talk about it in the book is this kind of using silence as a punishment. So there's a lot of victims I've spoken to where they've sent money repeatedly and they've got nothing left to send. And the fraudster says, I need so and so. And the person says, I don't have it. And then the fraudster goes offline and they don't communicate for days or even weeks. And of course, the victim, the person who thinks they're in this relationship, is absolutely distraught. Where is this person? Particularly if they say that they're in a war zone. Where is this person? And my experience of being in an abusive relationship is very, very similar in that you do something and the person stops speaking to you and they will not engage with you. And you do ridiculous things that you wouldn't normally do because you want a scrap of attention. And it's the same thing. It's just that it's online.
It's very devious. It's very
Yeah.
devious and calculated. And what I think is so rough is the lack of general empathy and understanding that of the sophistication of this when it comes to women, that they aren't, well, actually really any victim of a romance scam, but I think particularly women get cast as a desperate old lady who and I think, the media helps perpetuate that, and it's so disappointing that that is the image that's getting shown when in fact they're often very sophisticated, smart, kind people, trusting people, regular people who just want what everyone else wants, and that's a connection.
This is it. And I do a lot of public speaking, and something that I try and say at all of the conferences is that the common denominator between victims of romance fraud isn't stupidity, it's kindness. They're all in relationships, and when you're in a relationship, you want to help your partner. And that's what they're doing. So when did we start laughing at people being kind?
I love that you framed it that way. I've never heard it said in that exactly that way before, but it's true. And that I think in relationships we want people to be kind. We want people to be generous with each other. We want
Yeah.
helpers, and that's exactly what's happening, and it's being so taken advantage of. And I worry, and Becky, I wonder how you feel about this too, is what happens to people who have been taken advantage of in this way, and what does the rest of your life look like when your trust has been so violated?
Do you know, that's, I think for me, that's one of the hardest things, because some of the victims that I interviewed for the book, I'm still friendly with a few, and we kind of check in on WhatsApp. And with the exception of one, none of them are in relationships. And some of them, it's been years. And it's not because they're not attractive, they're not sociable. It's that they don't trust, I guess, their own judgment. Like, they could meet somebody who is perfectly nice, but they would always be thinking, oh God, what if? So they don't go for it. And that can be, it's like the crime that never stops giving, isn't it? So you go through the financial loss, you go through emotional devastation, and then potentially you end up more isolated. You end up without a partner in the future. Obviously I'm generalising, but I do think about that quite a lot.
Yeah, I've seen a similar situation too in the people that continue to be in contact with. Is, you know what, then I'm out of this game. Like I don't feel like I can trust people, and I'm not willing to put myself in that situation again.
And you can see why.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's what we were talking about just a minute ago, is not only it's the double whammy of the romance scam, is that not only did I give my heart to you and that turned out to be all a lie, but you were also plotting against me this whole time. Like you were actively plotting my demise. It just is a lot to ask people to stomach. And then the idea that, and now you are completely financially wrecked in a way that your life will never be the same.
Yeah. Yeah, this is it. And of course, somebody's confidence has taken such a battering that they may not feel worthy of being in a relationship, even though, of course, they are. As I've just said, they're kind, and that's got to be the basis for so many relationships. But their self-esteem, sadly, in a lot of cases, they don't feel worthy.
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
Well, it's interesting. I spoke to somebody quite recently who sent money to a celebrity romance fraudster, and she found out pretty much straight away that he wasn't who he said he was. I say straight away, I think they were in contact for like a month. Now, that was about a year ago, and she told me very recently that she's been married for 40 odd years. The lady's in her 60s. And she's still married, but the month she had with this fake celebrity, he made her feel better than any man ever has. And she said, even though she knows that it was absolutely not true, not a speck of it, she can't let that go. So she still thinks, she's not sending this person money anymore, but she still thinks about him.
I can tell you the exact same story from someone else. And isn't this a fascinating piece and such an interesting nugget? I talked to a man who was telling me he wrote to me and he said, I'm a reporter. I'm generally very skeptical. I'm going to run this story by you. I don't know if she's real or not, but she's supposed to come meet me. And I said, I read through it and I said, based on what I'm reading, I don't think she's real. I don't think she's going to meet you, but I will be there the next day. Either way, I hope you write and tell me you had a lovely date. And he wrote back and he said, no, I'm sorry, you were right. And she wasn't real. But he said, but the $75,000 I put into this was worth it. I never felt so loved, taken care of, understood. And even people who don't phrase it that way will say exactly what you said, that there is an amazing feeling of being seen, heard, understood, loved that these scammers are able to give to people, that people like. It's a crazy piece of this puzzle.
Yeah. And it's, when you're getting kind of attention and love like that, it's like a drug, isn't it? You just don't want to give it up. You can be that whole sort of like feeling of being drunk on love. If you've had that for so long, why would you ever feel like giving that up? But that's one of the things that makes me so cross. How dare they do it? How dare those people do it?
Right. And what you mentioned, that she was in a marriage while this was happening. Frequently we see that, it's a 58-year-old man who's been married for 30 years and has had a really bad day and responds to one of those texts and then gets, hi, I'm Jessica. I hope I'm not disturbing you. To me, it speaks to the absolute need in our society for better human connection. And I wonder if you think about that systemically and what that looks like and why we are so lonely.
I'm saying this using incredible podcast technology, but I actually think technology has got a big part to play. We work in jobs where we can do it like I work in an office from my home. I don't see people. My partner comes home, but I don't see people from one day to the next other than him. We do our shopping online. We have like Zoom calls with our friends. I think there is a real lack of in-person, human-to-human connection. And I think that's it's getting more and more and more. So we do feel more isolated. And let's face it, how do you meet a romantic partner these days? We work from home. You don't go and speak to people in bars because they might be a weirdo. So it's online dating. And that comes with all sorts of nightmares because of the people on there. We're living in a really unusual time, and I think we haven't quite got our heads around it yet, particularly people of, I'm in my mid-40s, so people sort of my age and older, where we're not really used to it. We used to go out to pubs and meet people, and I think it's think it's only going to get worse.
I think so too. And I certainly identify with what you said. I'm thinking of getting a new car, and I'm like, the only places I drive are McDonald's and Target because I've got to get a Diet Coke. And so, right, like we just don't go anywhere. And I started writing about it on Facebook, with the hashtag of no people needed. The more and more places I'm going, particularly when I travel, where there's no human there. Like the whole thing they have at airports now where you can go into the Amazon store and just grab things and leave and not talk to anyone. And I love using McDonald's as an example because wherever I'm driving, I am going to stop and get a Diet Coke. And more, they are starting to look like warehouses. The new McDonald's that are being built don't have a counter. You do this all on a kiosk. You make all your orders on the kiosk, and then someone will come out and like put it through a window, and that's your human connection. And when I think about, I love to drive. I want to talk to someone. I want to know, like, is the weather usually this hot here? Or how are people reacting to whatever? And you just don't even have the opportunity for any kind of human connection.
It's really dystopian, isn't it? You can
really
see it on a film,
Yes.
like a sort of a food hatch. Like it sounds like a prison. Like the
Yes.
hatch opens and you get a half-warm burger shoved through it.
That's exactly what it is. And it looks like that too. And you're like, this is happening in real time. I am watching this happen in real time where we're just not communicating with anybody. I was at DEF CON. It's a hacker conference in Las Vegas. And we were right in front of the Sphere, which is this like incredible, the Sphere. And so there was a woman there and she was selling Diet Coke, among other things. And so I had a chance to talk to her and she was like, well, they hacked into the Sphere. And I was like, no, as part of DEF CON, right? And I was like, no. And she told me that story. And the fact is, how am I going to get that story from like the industrial McDonald's? I'm never going to hear that story.
Yeah.
There's a general lack of human communication that we're losing. And then it's replaced by Reddit, where people are saying all kinds of crazy stuff and don't have any problem trolling people, saying horrific things. And so we've lost, in person, you have to be cordial to people for the most part. And you
would think so, wouldn't you? Well, although, to be honest, that seems to have gone out the window as well. But yeah, and places like Reddit and, even Facebook and stuff, you end up in a kind of echo chamber.
Yes.
And it's just people shouting the same thing back at one another.
Exactly.
There's just... I do find it really sad. And my partner's daughter is 14. And she just spends all her time on her phone, and she's on her phone to her friends, but on a phone. And you think, I'm sure they only live like a street away. Why don't they just meet? But no, it's on a phone. And, kids, when they're gaming, they'll say, well, I'm talking to people all the time. And I'm thinking, yeah, but you don't know who they are. You'll never meet them. They're saying they're a 14-year-old boy, the same as you, but it could well be a man in his 60s. There's just, this could go in.
This could go on forever. All right, well, let's go to some funny stuff then, because I know that you're good at that. Okay, the flags are really, really, they love to give themselves 2 first names. Oh my gosh, all the time. Oh my gosh, it's so funny. It's actually worth teaching on. That is an indicator, right?
Yeah, like it is.
Yeah.
John William, Terry William.
Yeah. Amy Michelle.
Don't know.
Yeah. It's funny, right?
Yeah. And
it's almost like they're mocking us at some point, because one thing that's happening a lot on LinkedIn is when somebody posts something about a recovery of crypto, then the scammers get right on it and they say, I was able to recover my crypto from blah, blah, blah. The guy's name yesterday was something like, hey Bobby. Like that's his name on LinkedIn. Like in LinkedIn, it's everybody's real name. It's not hey Bobby. It's not a moniker. It just, they're more and more obvious.
I had a Keanu Reeves contact me on LinkedIn. Yeah.
Of course he did.
Can you believe it? Because I think he's struggling. He needs to find a few opportunities, and LinkedIn's the best place.
So I was touched by the part about the British royal family, because that was actually one of my first opportunities talking to someone, and she was absolutely 100% convinced that she was in a relationship with Prince Harry. It was before Prince Harry got married, so it shows you like the timeline of
Really?
this. And she just wasn't having it any other way, and she believed that we brought her into the police station, well, to the DA's office twice, and had conversations with her where we were going through all the things. And why would Prince Harry make you pay for a visa to get to the UK? And she'd be like, well, that's the whole thing. I'm an American. And it was just like she had been prepped very well by the fake Prince Harry. So tell me, how did your interest then shift from people who've been scammed in this way to people specifically scammed by celebrities? And tell me what the difference is there.
I think I have the same interest, but I think the celebrity thing, it kind of came out of the blue for me. I'd been contacted by so many soldiers and oil rig workers and pilots and all the rest of it that when I had my first Keanu Reeves, I thought, oh my God, this is amazing.
You're leveling up.
Exactly. I think Keanu Reeves might be kind of final boss.
Mm-hmm.
And it was almost as if, because because in the book I talk about suckers lists. As soon as you engage, you're put on a list, and I think I must have been put on several because suddenly it was just fake celebrities that were contacting me, and now I get a mixture, but it's still mainly celebrities. It's really odd. I don't know why there's been such a shift, but they do approach people quite differently. So a lot of people say to me, well, why would somebody send XYZ, money because they're a millionaire? And it's a decent question, why would you? But the fraudsters know this. And as you said with your example, they prep you, they groom you. I know nobody likes the word groom because it's associated with child abuse, but that is what they do. They groom people. So, they talk about needing a membership card, a VIP fan card. The ones that I particularly dislike is when they talk about the fact that they've made a charity or they're looking for charitable donations for something. I find those even more distasteful than the others because they're finding something which is so bad that it needs a charity to support and that they're making money out of it themselves. I find it disgusting. So they do approach people in different ways, these kind of celebrity fraudsters. So again, it's clever. They know what we want and they give it to us.
Yeah. So tell me more about it. I actually only spoke to my first victim of a celebrity scam just last week, and it was interesting because I was not even familiar with the particular celebrity she was talking about, but she had affirmatively posted a comment on his Instagram, and that generated a comment back to her. So I can see how it's happening. I can see how a scammer in that business would then go through everybody who was talking to Kevin Costner and reaching out to them saying they're Kevin Costner. But tell me more about how that scam works.
So you're right. I mean, that is a big thing. If somebody posts on a fan page, I spoke to somebody only recently who they thought that they were in a relationship with Paul McCartney. And it was because they went on to a fan page, not even thinking it was Paul McCartney's page, and made a comment. And then they got somebody pretending to be the actual Paul McCartney through on Facebook Messenger. The fact that Meta lets that happen is a whole different podcast. But I think that's probably the main thing. Scammers will lurk on places that they know people are going to. And they also have buzzwords kind of set up for alerts as well. So if somebody mentions Keanu Reeves, suddenly a fake Keanu Reeves will appear in the chat. Message me, let's have a chat. And the thing is, with social media now, you can talk to celebrities. I posted something on Sam Neill's page the other day and I got a response and I was like over the moon because I love Sam Neill. And it was the real one. But there was this like, oh. And so you can see that you can have very small amounts of contact with celebrities. So it's not as unbelievable as it used to be because they can say, I don't have my own account, but I do sometimes kind of look out for people. I want to talk to my fans. And they will always say, my management team doesn't know about this. Please don't let anybody know. You'll damage my career, etc. there's a lot of talk about fake news. So if you might say to a celebrity imposter, oh, I've seen you in London this week, why don't we meet up? I'm not, it's fake news, I can't meet you.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That is interesting. And there is such a there's such a unique cachet to being in touch with someone untouchable like that. There's such a I feel very special because this
Yeah.
person has chosen me. This person who has access to so many people chose to be in touch with me.
Yes, certainly. There is that real feeling of being absolutely over the moon. It's a real dopamine hit.
Yes.
Like I say, I commented on this thing on Sam Neill's Instagram and I got a response and I literally, I don't obviously think we're going to get into a relationship and I'm going to have his babies. But there was
We don't know.
I'd be happy. Sam, if you're listening, I'm happy. But there was this kind of like, this real hit. And I actually messaged about 3 people to tell them that
Yes!
Sam Neill had commented. So you can see it. And it's so much more likely now that a celebrity will engage with you.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that. So back in COVID, I was on my Peloton all the time, and celebrities ride Peloton. And you can find out their celebrity name. And I remember one day I was in a class with one of the Real Housewives, and I could see it was one of the, and I was like, I'm gonna make it my business to beat this person in this class. And so and I did, and that was like my claim to fame on that. But the point is, there's something really there's a magic in being attached to the fame for just a second.
It is, because we are all interested in celebrities. You know,
Yes.
we see the same person play 20 different characters. And there is this natural curiosity. I wonder what they're like, particularly if you find them attractive.
Yes.
I wonder what they're like. I wonder what their likes and dislikes are in real life. So we do have this kind of strange fascination with people.
Yes.
And if it's somebody that you are a particular fan of, then
Yeah.
it's even more so.
Yeah. Well, someone like Keanu Reeves, who I think we were talking just before, or maybe even in the intro, like, people seem to like Keanu Reeves. People don't have anything bad to say about Keanu Reeves. So if Keanu Reeves is paying attention to you, that sounds really nice.
Exactly. And the other thing is, because he is known for being so nice, I don't know, I guess that makes his face more trustworthy when he pops up. I don't know.
Yeah,
and
maybe
he's
so.
famously not on any social media. So when he pops up and says, look, no one knows about this account, it's
Yeah, and using
it's
that
an
classic,
interesting thing.
yeah, and that classic technique of don't tell anybody. This is between you and me. This is a special thing that we have. Oh, it's hard to resist.
It is. And I think something that I talk about in the book is, so as an ex-gambling addict, I talk about facing up to that moment and having to, like, when you know what you're doing, you get to a point where you think, there's nothing in this for me. I'm going down a terrible road here. And I've spoken to victims of romance fraud who've said that at some point they've thought, oh my God, I know what's happening.
See it?
They see it. But they carry on with it. The same reason that I carried on with gambling, because the second you stop, you've then got to face up to what you've done and you've got to start rebuilding. And it's so much more tempting to not stop, because you can kind of carry on with it. That the in the book I call it that moment. It's when you have to face that.
Yes, that's a really interesting point that I always think about. You see the things that you want to see. You're walking by the red flags and that are obvious to your friends and family who are seeing this, but to you keep walking through because you want this to be different. Do you think it's a similar thing when you think about the moment? Because stopping makes you acknowledge all this stuff that you didn't want to look at.
Exactly. The second that you stop, you've got to look back on everything that's happened. You've got to face it. You've got to admit it to people around you. And you've got to then start rebuilding and kind of break that addiction. And a lot of romance fraud, it is addiction. You get that same high. So
yes,
having to stop and actually address it, it's just awful. And I have spoken to women who've said, I knew, but I just didn't want to stop, because I knew as soon as I stopped, that was it.
yeah. Yeah, and then you're not getting the endorphin rush of getting the good
Exactly.
part of what this is. The more I talk to you, the more I realize what a real psychological phenomenon this is. And I spoke to one of the survivors on the Survivor Stories recently, was an adult child whose dad was in this. And he said it's like he's an addicted person. Like, we can get him when the whole family's there and we're talking to him and we're like, this isn't real, you got to get out of this. And he'll be like, yep, I get it, I'm with you. And then he will sneak off and get the hit again, right? Like, it's irresistible.
Yeah. So I spoke to somebody whose mum is still embroiled in one of these. And she will admit when they get together, but it's almost like she's kind of paying lip service to the family, because
Yes.
the second she goes off home, and they've also found her like in the downstairs toilet messaging.
Yes.
So she's in the living room saying, yeah, I agree, I'm not going to speak to him anymore. And then sneaks off to message.
Right? It's such an addiction, right? Like, sneaks off to have some vodka in the bathroom, right? Like,
Yeah.
isn't that exactly what we're talking about? It's just,
Yeah.
I wonder when we will start to accept this as the psychological attack that this is. I wonder when we will really be able to change the narrative from old desperate women to really anybody who is seeking a connection and then gets in over their head psychologically. That the techniques being used against them are overwhelming.
I don't know when that will happen. Looking back to the sort of domestic abuse, romance fraud parallels, these days you wouldn't dream, well, most people wouldn't dream of making fun of someone who'd been the victim of domestic abuse. But 50 years ago,
Right.
it was, well, she asked for it, well, what did you do to upset him? That kind of thing. And I like to think that we're on the right trajectory and that we'll get to that point. But one thing I do think, and this probably makes me a sort of cynical old witch, is that people have this thing where they like to be better than somebody else. And if they can laugh at somebody else, it makes them feel better about themselves. And it's a horrible human trait. But I've seen it so often when I've seen reports of romance fraud in the media, and I've gone onto the comment section where the worst of the worst people hang out, and they say awful things.
Awful.
And
Awful.
I don't know how much of it they even mean. I think they say it for effect. They say it to make themselves feel better because they know that they'll get some likes. They'll get some other people going, hey, bro, you're right. I think human nature can be so ruthless online.
I can't believe that this is the first time you and I are talking, because what I will say is that we are walking the same paths and experiencing the exact same bright lights and learning and understanding the same things from two parts of the globe, because what you're saying is such a common issue. There is a woman in Colorado. Her name's Debbie Fox, and she was a classic victim of a romance scam. She had the bravery to come forth and tell her story on local news, and the comments about her were horrific. And I even was asked to do an AARP podcast about why is that the response? Like, literally reading through some of these things, and why are people saying that? There's a million ways we can go with that conversation, but what I'd like to look at with you is, what is the stigma doing in terms of really not allowing us to know the breadth and the depth of this problem?
Well, having such a stigma attached means that no one wants to report it. Why would you? You look at how victims are treated and you think, oh God, I'm not going through that. So you don't report it. And then the people who need the statistics for how often it happens don't have the right statistics. So then the right resources aren't put into it. It's just a vicious circle, really. And also, I mean, I know that the US isn't that much better, but over here, there's nowhere for romance fraud victims to go. Certainly nothing funded. We have a couple of organisations, one of them set up by a friend of mine called Love Said.
Oh, yes, Anna.
Yeah, Anna and Cecilia. So, but it's not funded, it's all voluntary. And people don't know about it. And I've spoken to some amazing law enforcement people over here, fantastic. But the red tape is so bad and the budgets are so small, and there are a lot of people in powerful positions who don't care. So I always feel really negative when I speak to people, because I always sort of end up saying, oh God, we're fighting a losing battle. But there are people who are very passionate and do care and won't stop. But we need people with more power to make more difference.
I couldn't agree with you more on that. There are actually exactly what you said. Like, I frequently am very angry with Meta. I know there are people inside Meta who care. I know there are people who very much dislike what's happening in Meta, but I think that the top level of Meta does not care about this. I think there are people in government who care about this. I think the top level, this is not their priority, at least in the US. I know that there are people in local law enforcement who care very much about this, but their admin does not want to allocate the bandwidth to deal with these cases. So I don't know if you've been following, but you probably do know that Cecilia's show drops today.
Yes, I do. In fact, I saw her on Instagram maybe yesterday talking about it.
Outstanding. So let's plug her real quick. So Cecilia from Tinder Swindler has done an amazing piece of work with Netflix, where she has followed some stories of people who are victims of this crime and really tried to give them some assistance in navigating this work. So are you excited to watch it?
Of course. Yeah, in fact, my partner's away for the night. So
Perfect.
Yeah, I've got like an amazing dinner, and that's exactly what I'm going to spend my evening doing.
Yeah, I'm excited about it too. We need more brave storytellers, and we need more people who are willing to come forward in a way that I'm always looking for someone that looks like they could live in my neighborhood or live in your neighborhood or live in someone else's neighborhood. Is I'm looking for people that people can relate to, the people that break the concept of a sad old man or a sad old woman, because the fact is it's happening to everyone. Everyone is getting hit by this.
Yeah, every age, gender, race, sexuality. You know, romance fraudsters don't care. If you've got a pulse, they'll go for you. It's as simple as that. And you don't have to be a certain gender, race, sexuality, age to become embroiled in one of these. You can be absolutely anybody at any time of life, at any time of the day or night. And when it makes me laugh, I wrote a really big piece on general scams, so I didn't talk about romance fraud, for the Times newspaper over here. And one of the things I said was, if you think that you're too clever to be defrauded, please think again. And the overwhelming majority of comments were very positive, but there were a couple of men who simply said, I'm too clever for this. And I thought, oh, here we go. So
Of course you are. Of course you are. Of course you are. And I will talk to you in 12 months when you have been targeted.
Exactly.
You know, it's funny. I have that frequently too. I'll be talking to anybody about this, and they will say, well, I would never send money to cryptocurrency. And I was like, but you might. You really might. And you don't know. In fact, that's what my piece on LinkedIn is about today. It's about you're not too clever, and you're just not. And the more you walk around thinking that, the less you're listening to things like this that are talking about this is what's happening right now. So you mentioned in your book, which I really appreciated, there are that victims need a story. There's always a story that feeds into why you can't see them in person or what.
Yeah.
So when we think about things that people could be looking out for today, what are some things you're hearing about the current stories? What are stories victims are getting told?
So the ones that I still see are, if somebody's in the military, they'll say that unfortunately they can't speak because of privacy. They don't want to lose their job. They don't want to. Certain signals will give away their location, which they can't afford to do, etc. There are so many times that you hear of doctors and pilots and so on where they just go off and they'll say, oh, well, sorry, I was operating or I was in the air. And even if you can see on one of the the channels that actually they're online, they'll still come back and say that they weren't. I think it's, in my experience, a lot of these reasons they can't meet haven't changed. So the kind of the oil rig worker, they can't meet because they're in the middle of the North Sea. And one thing that I didn't realise, and actually I know I'm going slightly off topic, is until I started looking at this, I didn't realise that oil rig workers only work for a couple of weeks at a time on these rigs.
There's a lot to learn. Yes.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah.
So, if somebody said to me prior to me researching it, if someone said, look, I can't see you for like 4 months because I'm on this bloody rig for 4 months, that wouldn't strike me as odd because I wouldn't know. I don't know what oil rig workers do. So, yeah, there's things like that. Like I say, there's the celebrities, it's quite easy. They say that their management won't allow it, or they've got press schedules, or they're filming. The number of times that celebrity imposters have told me that they're filming something at the moment and they can't speak on their video. Often somebody's phone is broken, so, they can't... I think, do you know what? Any legitimate reason why somebody can't meet you, they will use.
Yeah. No, they're good. They're super clever.
Yeah.
They're super clever.
Yeah.
I could talk to you over and over I wish you lived in my neighborhood so we could chit chat more often. But
wouldn't that be amazing? Yeah.
Wouldn't that be nice? So as we close, tell me what's next for Becky Holmes. What are you working on?
Gosh, I've got a new book coming out.
Tell us.
Next year in April. So it's called The Future of Fraud. So it's not, unfortunately, it's not funny like the Keanu one, and it's much smaller. But I look at crypto, AI, the dark web, gaming, and then so that it's not all doom and gloom, what we can do in terms of sort of protecting ourselves and others. So looking at, regulation, technology, speaking about things, the way we use language. So I guess it's almost like a pocket guide to what to look out for in the future. And I am sitting, as we speak, putting together a proposal for a third book.
This is exciting. This is exciting. You're doing amazing work. And who knew that you sitting in your house getting annoyed with celebrities and oil rig and military workers would lead to this fork of your career? It
has given me, it's a whole new chapter of life. And something that isn't in the book is actually I met my now fiance because of this book, because I was researching scammers on the dating site Tinder, and he was on there. So we met while I was looking for fraudsters, and he actually turned out to be real.
I love that. Oh, I love that. Well, let's talk about that next time we talk, because that is a very happy piece of this. Oh, that's great. Well, thank you so much for coming on the Stolen podcast. I look forward to talking to you again.
Yes, that would be amazing. Like you say, I could talk to you forever. It sounds like we're just the same person in two countries.
Yes, 2 peas in a pod.
You've just heard the truth. Now, what will you do with it? Subscribe to Stolen and share it with someone you care about, because anyone can be a target. Visit OperationShamrock.org to learn more, get resources, and join the fight. And follow Erin West on LinkedIn. Stolen is real stories, real people, and a crisis we can't afford to ignore.